The day my son drove me home from the hospital, the world outside the car window looked almost too bright, like someone had turned the contrast up on the whole neighborhood. The trees were bare, the sky a sharp winter blue, and every house we passed felt solid and sure of itself. I remember thinking, if I can just get back to my own bed, my own chair, maybe I'll start to feel like myself again. I sat in the passenger seat with a blanket over my lap, my cane propped between my knees. A month of pneumonia and what they called complications had whittled me down to soft bones and paper skin. Every bump in the road rattled straight up my spine. I still had that chemical smell of hospital soap on me, no matter how many times they'd changed my gown. I wanted the smell of my house. Lemon oil, old books, a hint of coffee ground into the air from years of morning cups. Beside me, Daniel drove with one hand on the wheel and the other clutching his phone. He held it a little away from his ear, speaking into it in a low voice. "Yeah, we're 5 minutes out," he said. "Just make sure the kids keep it down for a bit, okay? I don't want her freaking out the second we walk in." Took me a second to realize he meant me. I watched his mouth as he talked, the little frown line that appeared between his eyebrows sometime in the last few years. He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed straight ahead. "All right," he said into the phone. "I'll handle it. Yeah, I'll handle it." He hung up and dropped the phone into the cup holder with a clatter.
"Who was that?"
I asked. "Lily," he said. "She's just making sure the place is ready." "Ready?" I repeated. "It's a house, Daniel, not a surprise party." He gave a quick, tight laugh, the kind you give a stranger out of politeness. "Just don't overreact when we get home, okay, Mom? Things might look a little different. We did some cleaning. Moved stuff around. It'll be good." I turned my head to look at him. "Different how?" He shrugged, knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. "You'll see. After what happened, we thought a fresh start might help you. Less clutter, easier to get around. You almost—" He cut himself off, jaw working. "You were really sick." I was. There had been one night, somewhere in that blur of beeping monitors and oxygen tubes, when a doctor leaned over me and said, very gently, "We're not out of the woods yet, Mrs. Collins." I remember thinking of the house then, of whether Daniel would know where the gas shoot-off valve was, where the spare key was hidden. I never once thought I might not go back to it at all. "I'm grateful you took care of things while I was gone," I said. "I know it wasn't easy." His mouth twitched. "Yeah," he said. "We did what we had to do." We turned onto my street, and my heart gave a little leap the way it always did when I saw my place. The maple tree in the front yard was just gray branches against the sky, but it was mine. Frank and I had planted that tree the year Daniel was born. For 40 years, that little beige house with the peeling trim had been the center of my universe. But as Daniel slowed the car, something was wrong. For one thing, my driveway was full. My little blue sedan sat where I'd left it, a bit dusty but otherwise fine. But behind it, crammed so close their bumpers nearly kissed, were a white minivan with a dent in the side and a dark SUV with a cracked taillight. On the street, a moving van idled, back doors open, a dolly leaning against the ramp. A cold feeling crept up the back of my neck. "Why are there other people's cars in my driveway?" I asked. Daniel let out a breath through his nose. "I told you, things are a little different," he said. "Lily's parents and Carla are here. They needed a place for a while. A place." I turned toward him, my hospital bracelet clicking softly as it slid on my wrist. "Daniel. What on earth?" "Mum." He cut in, finally meeting my eyes. There was something almost pleading in his expression. "Just, let's get you inside first. We'll talk, okay? You shouldn't be standing around in the cold." I looked past him at the house. My porch, where I used to sit with Frank in the evenings and drink weak coffee, had changed. The terracotta pots with my sad little geraniums were gone, replaced by 2 massive plastic planters with tall leafy plants I'd never seen before. Instead of my faded, "Wipe your paws, mat," there was a brand new one that read, "Home Sweet Home," in curly letters. It was such a small thing, that mat, but it felt like someone had signed their name at the bottom of my life without asking. "I didn't say they could stay here," I murmured, more to myself than to him. He was already out of the car, coming around to my side. He opened my door and held out his arm. "Come on, Mom. Watch your step." The cold air bit at my cheeks, sharp and clean compared to the stale hospital corridors. I swung my legs out carefully, feeling the weakness in my thighs. The cane slipped a little on the uneven concrete until Daniel steadied it. "Lean on me," he said. "Don't be stubborn." I hated needing him like that, but right then, I didn't have much choice. We moved slowly up the walkway, each step measured. As we got closer, I heard voices, laughter, a television blaring somewhere inside. The sound of a house full of people. I reached for the doorknob out of long habit, but my hand met only air. The door opened before I could touch it. Carla stood there, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a smear of something red. Tomato sauce, maybe, on her wrist. I'd only ever seen her at Lily and Daniel's place, and even then not often. "Oh," she said when she saw me. Her eyebrows went up for a second, but there was no embarrassment in her face. Just mild surprise. "She's here?" "She's here." Like I was the repairman, or a delivery. "Hello, Carla," I said, breathing a little harder from the walk. "What's all this?" She stepped aside without answering my question, letting Daniel guide me in. The moment we crossed the threshold, the smell hit me. Strong frying oil, onions, spices I couldn't name. My house had always smelled like furniture polish and old books, with a hint of whatever I'd last baked. This was foreign. Not bad, exactly. Just not mine. From the living room came the sound of a child shrieking with laughter, the fast patter of little feet on my hardwood floors. There was another voice too, older, speaking in rapid Spanish, then switching to English to say, "Careful, mijo." I clung a little tighter to Daniel's arm. The entryway itself was different. The little oak table Frank made, the one that had always been there holding my keys and the mail, was gone. In its place was a narrow metal shoe rack piled with sneakers and bright plastic sandals, none of them my size. Jackets I didn't recognize hung from hooks drilled into my wall. "Where's my table?" I asked. Carla tossed the dish towel over her shoulder. "We put some things in storage," she said. "There just wasn't space." "Come in. Sit down, I've got food on the stove." Storage, like my life was off-season clothes. Daniel's hand tightened on my elbow. "Careful, there's a box here," he murmured, steering me around a cardboard box labeled KITHEN in black marker. I shuffled forward into what used to be my living room and stopped dead. The room I'd left a month ago had been cluttered, sure. Floral sofa with a sag in the middle where Frank used to sit, my mother's glass, front china cabinet against the wall, our wedding photo over the mantel. A crocheted blanket in autumn colors thrown over the recliner. Now, the only thing that hadn't moved was the mantel. Even that looked naked, stripped of its framed pictures. A massive flat-screen television I did not own dominated the opposite wall, perched on a shiny black stand with blinking lights. Two tall speakers loomed on either side, like sentries. My couch was gone, replaced by a sectional in a fabric I wouldn't have chosen. The china cabinet, my mother's cabinet, had vanished completely. The walls were dotted with new photographs, unfamiliar faces smiling at beaches and birthday cakes. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, zoomed past my knees with a toy truck in one hand. On his head was Frank's old baseball cap, the one he'd worn to every game he watched on TV, brim broken and just so. The sight of it on that child's head, bobbing and tilting, made my breath catch. "Hey," I said, reaching out without thinking. "That hat." The boy dodged my hand easily and ran straight into the arms of Rosa, Lily's mother, who had appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on an apron. "Abuela, look," he shouted. "I got a hat!" Rosa laughed, ruffling his hair. "Very handsome, mijo. That was your father's hat?" I whispered. Rosa looked up then, finally noticing me properly. "Martha," she said, giving me a quick once-over. "You're home. We've been cooking. You must be hungry." Hungry was not the word I would have used. Hollow, maybe. Untethered. My eyes scanned the room again, searching for that cabinet. It had been my mother's pride and joy, crossing oceans and wars and bad apartments before settling in this house. When Frank died, I dusted it every week, talking to it like it was his stand-in. "Where's my living room set?" I said, louder this time. "Where is my mother's cabinet?" Carla waved a hand, already turning back toward the kitchen. "We put some of your furniture in storage. It was old anyway. You don't need all that big stuff, not with your health." "Old." I pressed my lips together so hard they trembled. Daniel hurried me toward the recliner. Frank's recliner, now draped in a bright polyester throw that clashed with everything. "Sit, Mom," he said. "You look pale." I sank into it because my knees were about to give out. My heart was beating too fast, my chest tightening in a way that brought back the hospital in an instant. "Daniel?" I said. "What is going on? Why are there strangers in my house? Why is my furniture gone?" He squatted in front of me, forearms resting on his thighs, like he used to when explaining to his son why he couldn't have dessert first. "Mom, calm down, okay?" he said quietly. "You're still recovering. While you were in the hospital, we had to make some decisions." "Decisions?" I repeated. "About my house. About everything," he said. "Lily's parents, they had some financial trouble. Their landlord sold the building, they had to move out. They had nowhere to go. We couldn't just leave them on the street." "You could help them find an apartment," I said. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "You could loan them money. That's what people do. You don't just move them into somebody else's home without asking." He glanced over his shoulder at Rosa and Carla, then back at me. "Mom, this is family," he said. "You'd want to help family, right? You were in the hospital. The house was sitting here empty. It made sense to bring them in. We're all helping each other." "I did not say they could live here." I said, each word careful. He hesitated, then licked his lips. "Well, it's technically not just your house anymore." For a moment, I genuinely thought the pneumonia had come back and I was hallucinating. The words bounced around in my head without landing. "What did you say?" I asked. He shifted his weight, eyes flickering to Lily, who now stood in the doorway, arms folded tight across her chest. "Well, made some changes while you were in the hospital," he said, "to make it easier. So you don't have to stress about bills and paperwork. We put the house in my name. And we signed an agreement with Lily's family about them staying here and helping out with expenses." I stared at him. My ears rang. "You what?" "It's for your own good," he rushed on. "After your scare, we couldn't just leave things unsettled. This way, I can manage everything. You don't have to worry." My fingers dug into the arms of the recliner. For a second, the room went soft around the edges, colors bleeding together. I thought I might faint. "You can't put my house in your name," I said. "I would never sign my house away. Never." He looked at me then with something like pity. Or maybe it was impatience. "Yes, you did, Mom," he said quietly, firmly. "Don't you remember? At the hospital. You signed the papers." If you've never poured your whole life into four walls, it's hard to explain how a house stops being just wood and plaster and starts feeling like another organ in your body. Frank and I bought our place almost 40 years ago, when our backs didn't ache, and we still thought we had all the time in the world. He was working nights at the printing plant then, coming home with ink under his fingernails and tired pride in his shoulders. I was at the grocery store, 8 hours on my feet, ringing up other people's full carts while we counted coins for our own. New shoes, television, vacations. We put everything off so we could fill that old coffee tin on top of the fridge labeled, "Oh, us." The first time the realtor opened our future front door, I hesitated on the threshold. The wallpaper was curling off in strips, the brown shag carpet smelled faintly like an old dog, and there was a crack in the kitchen ceiling that looked, to me, like a warning. Frank just stood in the middle of the empty living room, turned slowly, and grinned. "Can you see it, Martha?" he asked. "Cuts right here. Your mama's china cabinet over there. Christmas tree in that corner. We'll fix the rest." I could see it. I saw birthday parties and burnt dinners, late-night arguments and early morning forgiveness. I saw Daniel as a little boy running down the hallway in superhero pajamas. I saw us getting old there. It was ugly as sin that first day, but it was ours, and that made it beautiful. Years later, when a neighbor bragged about moving into some new subdivision with granite countertops and open concept everything, Frank just snorted. He was standing on a ladder, repainting our trim instead of hiring it done. "We worked too hard for this house to ever give it away, Martha," he said, brush in hand. "They'll carry me out of here feet first." In the end, that's exactly how it happened. 5 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, his heart just stopped. One minute he was in his chair, complaining about the announcers on the ball game, and the next there were paramedics where our Christmas tree used to go. They wheeled him out past the marks on the doorframe where we'd measured Daniel's height every year. After he died, the house sounded different. The same creaks and groans, but now they echoed. I turned his little basement workshop into a sewing room, because the sight of his half-finished shelves made my chest hurt, but I left his tools on the pegboard exactly where he'd hung them. Sometimes I'd go down there, sit on his old stool, and wrap my fingers around the worn handles, remembering his voice's steady, teasing sure. At least I still had Daniel. He was our miracle baby. After 3 miscarriages and 1 long night in a hospital that I try not to think about, the doctor patted my hand and said, "Be grateful for the one you have." So we were. Maybe too grateful. When you only get one child, it's easy to forget that, no? Is sometimes the kinder word. He was smart, my boy. He could take apart a radio and put it back together without a manual, rehang a door that was sticking, charm his teachers out of detentions. What he couldn't do was stick with anything that bored him. He went off to college, changed majors twice, then dropped out altogether when the work got hard and the fun ran out. After that came a string of jobs: warehouse, sales, call centers, each one wrong for him in some new way. Frank would grumble when Daniel called asking for little help, but then he'd dig into his wallet. He'll land on his feet. He'd tell me quietly after hanging up the phone. One day he'll turn it around. You'll see. The night after Frank's funeral, when the house smelled like lilies and leftovers and my own grief, Daniel sat on the edge of our bed. He took my hand in both of his. "I'll take care of you, Mom," he said, voice rough. "I promise. You won't have to worry about anything now that Dad's gone." I wanted to believe him, so I did. He was my son, my only one. I told myself that under all the drifting and excuses, there was a decent man who loved his mother. A couple of years later, he brought Lily home. She came through my front door with a bubbling casserole dish and a bouquet of gas station flowers, kissing my cheek like we were already family. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Can I call you Mom?" She didn't wait for the answer. She was pretty in a polished, efficient way. Her hair was always smooth, her nails were done, and her clothes never had that worn-at-the-cuff look mine did. She moved through my kitchen like she'd rehearsed, opening the right drawer the first time, finding the serving spoons without asking. She swatted Daniel's hand away from the biscuits and called him Babe, laughed at his corny jokes. That went a long way with me. Over dinner she asked about the house, how long we'd lived there, who picked the colors, where we got the old sideboard. She ran her fingers over the nicked doorframe where Daniel's heights were penciled in crooked lines. "This place has so much character," she said. "You don't see houses like this anymore. My parents would die for a kitchen this big." Her parents, Rosa and Miguel, appeared not long after. They brought flan and stories about crossing borders and working 3 jobs at once. My dining room filled with Spanish and English, clinking silverware and loud laughter. I respected them. They had worked hard like we had. But even in those early visits, there were tiny comments that stuck to me like burrs. Rosa walked the hallway slowly, palm gliding along the banister. "Such a big place for just one old lady," she said with a chuckle. Maybe she meant nothing by it. It still prickled. Miguel stood in my kitchen, turning in a slow circle. "Imagine what we could do with a kitchen like this," he told her. "We could have the whole family every weekend. Real home base." I refilled their coffee cups and told myself I was being too sensitive. Different families talk differently, I thought. Don't be that old woman who hears insults in everything. Lily started dropping by more often on her own. She'd show up with soup in plastic containers or a bag of groceries. We overbought. Or just an extra half hour between errands. "You shouldn't be climbing those stairs so much," she told me one day as I lugged a basket of laundry up from the basement. She stood at the bottom, arms slightly out like a spotter. "Maybe you'd be better off in a condo with an elevator. Or one of those nice assisted living places. They have activities, friends, everything." "I have activities," I said, pausing on the landing. "Church, my sewing group at the senior center, and Mrs. Lewis next door who needs someone to complain to." "That's plenty." "Of course," she said quickly. "I just worry. It's a lot of house for one person to manage. You deserve an easier life." Concern wrapped around a suggestion I didn't ask for. Then there were the papers. One afternoon I walked into the kitchen and found her at my table with my mail spread out like a card game. "Oh, I hope you don't mind," she said, already tearing open an envelope. "You had a stack here. I thought I'd help you organize. These red stamps are making me anxious." Embarrassment burned under my skin. "I was going to get to those," I said. "I know what I owe." "I know, Mom," she said, using that word like a password. "It's just, with everything you've been through, it's easy to let things slip. You should really switch to online billing. I can set it up. Less clutter, fewer chances to miss something." She sorted my bills and bank statements into tidy piles. It did look better. When she slipped a few folders into her bag, "I'll scan these and make a system for you," I actually thanked her. Back then, I was grateful Lily organized my bills. I didn't realize she was also organizing a theft. Around the same time, Daniel's little help became a habit. $50 for gas here, $100 for a surprise fee there, $300 because their rent went up. "I'll pay you back next month, Mom." "Promise," he'd say, eyes sliding away. "You said that last month," I'd reply, trying to keep it light. "This time I mean it." Sometimes the money trickled back. More often it didn't. I wrote the loans down in a notebook for a while, then stopped. He was my son. You don't send your own child a bill. My body started to slow down before my trust did. I found myself getting winded walking from the couch to the kitchen. Carrying laundry up the stairs left a tight band around my chest that took longer and longer to loosen. At night, I'd lie in bed listening to my own breathing, counting the shallow inhales, wondering when it had gotten so loud. Frank had always joked, "You go into the hospital for a hangnail, come out with a missing leg." His voice lived in my head, turning into an excuse. I told myself it was just age, that I'd call the doctor next week. The next week kept moving until one morning it ran out. I was reaching up for the sugar in the top cabinet when my vision narrowed and the world slid sideways. The next thing I knew, the linoleum was cold against my cheek and every breath felt like trying to suck air through a straw. "Mom! Mom!" Daniel's voice sounded panicked and far away. Hands gripped my shoulders, tried to roll me gently. "Open your eyes." "Come on, Mom, stay with me." I forced my eyelids open. His face hovered over me, pale and wild-eyed. Behind him, Lily was on the phone rattling off our address. "I'm fine," I tried to say, but it came out a dry whisper. "You're not fine," he snapped, fear sharp in his tone. "We're calling an ambulance." That's it. No argument. The ride to the hospital was sirens and ceiling lights and the hiss of oxygen. In the emergency room, they attached me to machines, took blood, listened to my chest. A young doctor with dark circles under his eyes came back with my chart and an expression that made my stomach drop. "If we hadn't caught this, you might not have made it," he said. "You've got pneumonia and your oxygen levels are dangerously low. We need to admit you." Admit. Such a small word to mean. Leave your life outside and hope it's waiting when you come back. I looked at Daniel and Lily standing at the foot of the bed, their faces pinched with worry. "Let them help you, Mom," Daniel said quietly. "Please. Don't be stubborn this time. We'll handle everything at home." Lily stepped closer, wrapping her fingers around mine. "We'll take care of the house, the bills, the mail. Everything," she said. "You just focus on getting better." "Okay, Mom." Lying there with my lungs burning and machines beeping around me, I let their words wash over the fear. I told myself I was lucky, that I had a son and a daughter-in-law who loved me enough to step in. So I signed the forms. I watched the elevator doors close, believing my home would be exactly as I left it when I came back. That was the last time I walked away from my house, truly believing it was still mine. The first few days in the hospital blurred together like watercolors left in the rain. I remember flashes, the hiss of oxygen in my nose, the soft squeak of nurses' shoes, the constant beeping that made it hard to tell if my heart was racing or it was just the machines. I was weaker than I'd ever been in my life. Simple things, lifting my head, reaching for the cup of water, felt like chores. They had me on some kind of drip that made my thoughts slow and heavy, like they had to push through cotton before they reached my mouth. Time didn't feel straight. It wobbled. Daniel came every day at first. He'd show up with a coffee for himself, and maybe a magazine or some grapes for me, drop into the plastic chair by the bed, and sigh like he was the one hooked up to machines. "You're looking better, Mom," he'd say, even when I knew I was still gray-faced and hollow-eyed. Colors coming back. Lily came most days too, though not always at the same time. Sometimes she arrived with him, other times later, hair still damp from a shower, phone clutched in her hand. They'd fuss with my blanket, adjust my pillows, talk over my head about bills and work schedules and grocery runs. "We stocked your fridge," Daniel told me one afternoon, tapping something into his phone as he spoke. "Threw out the old stuff. I paid the electric and gas online too. Don't worry about anything at the house, we've got it." It should have been a comfort, and mostly it was. Lying there with a plastic bracelet on my wrist, I felt more like a patient than a person. Having someone say, "We've got it," took some of the weight off. Still, every now and then, a little voice inside me would whisper, "That's my job. That's still my house." One morning, a woman in a navy blazer came in with a clipboard. She had a hospital badge clipped to her lapel and a pen already in her hand. "Mrs. Collins," she said, "I'm from admissions and billing. We just need you to sign some standard forms. Consents, insurance, that sort of thing." She might as well have been speaking another language. But she smiled kindly and shuffled the papers so the little sticky notes pointed to the lines. "Here's your consent for treatment. Here's for your insurance to be billed. Here's acknowledgement of our privacy practices," she said, rapid and practiced. "Your son can help if you like." Daniel stood up, took the clipboard, and flipped through the pages with a furrowed brow. "This just says they can talk to your insurance and that you understand the procedures," he explained, pointing to the lines. "This one's the thing you sign every time you go to a doctor. It's all standard, Mom." My hands felt clumsy, but I took the pen. The lines danced a little in my vision. I skimmed enough to recognize some of the words. "Treatment coverage I authorize," and then signed where the bright tabs told me to. For a while that set the pattern. Papers appeared, Daniel or a nurse explained them, I signed. I told myself, he's helping, I'm lucky to have him. One afternoon, Lily came alone. Daniel had been called into work, she said. She sat beside my bed, her purse on her lap, and studied my face for a long moment. "How are you feeling really?" she asked. "Like somebody parked a truck on my chest," I said. "But the doctor says I'm headed the right way." She nodded, then glanced toward the door to make sure we were alone. "Can I ask you something a little personal?" she said. I was too tired to do anything but nod. "What if?" She hesitated, then smoothed the blanket near my hand. "What if something had happened? I mean, I know you're getting better now, thank God. But when they brought you in, they weren't sure, right?" I swallowed. The memory of Daniel's frightened face in my kitchen, the siren, the doctor's serious tone, it all flickered through me again. "They said it was close," I admitted. "Do you have a will?" she asked gently. "Like, is the house in order, paperwork, that kind of thing?" "Yes," I said. "Frank and I went down to the lawyer years ago. It all goes to Daniel. There's no one else." She nodded slowly, eyes soft. "Good. That's good. I see so many families ripped apart because nobody wrote anything down. And with how serious this was," she let the sentence trail off, then continued, voice light. "You know, sometimes it helps to have someone on paper who can make decisions if you're too sick. Power of attorney. Or having Daniel on the deed too, just for emergencies. It can make things easier." "I hadn't really thought about that," I said. My tongue felt thick. We figured leaving it to him and the will was enough." "Of course," she said quickly. "I'm not saying it's not. You said yourself, everything goes to him anyway. We're just making things smoother. For everyone." "I'll think about it," I murmured. That was the truth. I was too foggy to do much more than that. The next day, Daniel came in alone, tapping his phone against his palm. "Lily said you two talked," he said after the nurse left. "About, me helping more with the house stuff." "We talked a little," I said. "I told her I'd think about." "Right," he cut in. "She said you agreed it made sense to put me on the house. So I can handle things if you get worse. That you didn't want me to have to jump through hoops later." I frowned, trying to remember the exact words I'd used. Had I agreed? I remembered saying he'd get it all one day. That much was true. I said everything goes to you anyway. I replied slowly. I don't recall saying, Mom. He leaned closer. You were the one who brought it up after Dad died. About not wanting to leave me a mess. We're just doing what you wanted. I promise it's just to help. I didn't want to argue. Not when my head felt thick and my chest still ached with every breath. We'll talk about it when I'm home, I said at last. Sure, he said. But there was something relieved in his face, like a box had just been ticked. A few days later, he arrived with a slim gray folder under his arm. Mum, a social worker's coming by with some forms, he said, pulling the tray table closer. Advanced directives, all that boring stuff. It'll help me talk to your insurance and doctors without the runaround. Just sign where they tell you. My heart fluttered a little. What kind of forms? Just the usual, he said. So I can manage things for you. You said you wanted that, remember? Before I could answer, a woman in a blazer appeared at the door, all business. She wore a hospital badge, though I didn't recognize her. Mrs. Collins, she said, crisp but polite. I'm here to go over some paperwork, your advance directive. Medical power of attorney and a few authorizations. Your son asked that we make sure everything is in order. She set a thick stack of forms on the tray. My eyes blurred looking at the tiny print. She tapped each with her pen, explaining in a practiced rush. This one says who can make medical decisions if you can't. This allows us to speak to your son about your insurance and bills. This acknowledges that you've received information about your rights. Her finger moved quickly from page to page. Somewhere in the middle of the stack, I glimpsed the words, property, and interest, and something that looked like transfer. But my head was buzzing, and the beeping in the hall grew louder. I squinted, trying to pull the letters into focus. Do we have to do this now? I murmured. It'll only take a minute, Mom, Daniel said, hand light on the bedrail. It's just so I can handle the boring stuff. Talk to the insurance, pay your utilities online. You said you didn't want to worry about it. He had that patient, coaxing tone he used when I hesitated to let him carry heavy boxes. The woman with the clipboard smiled the professional smile of someone on a tight schedule. If you have any questions, I can answer them, she said. But this is all fairly standard. It just gives your chosen representative the ability to act in your best interest. A best interest. My eyelids felt heavy, and a wave of drowsiness rolled through me. I thought of bills piling up while I lay there, of the oxygen hissing at my nose, of Daniel's promise. I'll take care of you, Mom. I took the pen. The lines swam a little. I focused on the bright, sticky flags, signed where they told me, trusting that my son wouldn't tuck anything dangerous into the stack. It didn't even cross my mind that he might. After that day, his visits got shorter. Work's been crazy, he'd say, kissing my forehead and checking his watch. Lily started showing up more often instead, her phone ready in her hand. I just need you to tap here, she'd say, holding the screen where I could see it. It's just a bank notification so I can pay your utilities. And this one is to confirm your online access. You'll get less paper. Remember how we talked about that? I pressed my fingertip where she told me, not entirely sure what I was authorizing. The little spinning wheels and tiny print were a foreign language to me. When I asked once, "What is this exactly?" she laughed lightly. "You're overthinking, Mom," she said. "It's 30 pages of legalese. It's just to make life easier for you." That phrase, overthinking, stuck with me. It was the first time I realized they might see my questions as a nuisance, not a right. One evening, a nurse I liked, a woman named Carla, with kind eyes and a streak of silver in her hair, came in to check my vitals. She adjusted the cannula under my nose and smiled. "It's good your son is handling your estate planning now," she said conversationally. "So many families wait until it's too late and then fight over everything." "My what?" I asked. "Your estate," she said. "Your property, your house." I heard him on the phone with someone in the hallway. He was talking about deed transfers and doing it the right way to save on taxes. My heart lurched. "Deed transfers," I repeated. He said that. And she must have sensed my alarm, because she patted my arm. "Don't worry," she said quickly. It sounded like he was being proactive. Not many kids bother. After she left, the room felt colder. I stared at the ceiling tiles, replaying every form I'd signed, every screen I'd tapped, That clipboard with the crowded pages. Had I misunderstood? Had I given him more power than I realized? When Daniel came in the next afternoon, I waited until Lily had stepped out for coffee. "Danny," I said quietly, "what exactly did I sign the other day, with that woman and the folder?" He blinked, then gave a little laugh. "Mom, you're still woozy," he said. "It was just the advance directive and stuff so I can talk to your doctors and the insurance. You know, boring adulting. The nurse said you were talking about transferring the deed." I pressed. "About taxes." His jaw tightened for a heartbeat, then relaxed. "She must have misheard," he said. "You know how people in hospitals gossip. I'd never do anything major without telling you. Don't you trust your own son?" There it was, the little hook of guilt hidden in the words. "Don't you trust me?" I swallowed what I wanted to say. That trust and blind consent were not the same thing. "Of course I trust you," I said instead. It's a lot of paper." "Then stop worrying and focus on getting better," he said, kissing my forehead. "Let me handle the rest. That's what you wanted, remember?" That night I lay awake long after the hallway lights dimmed, the monitors casting a pale glow on the walls. I stared at the ceiling and replayed it all: Lily's gentle questions about wills, Daniel's confident tone when he said I'd agreed, the woman with the clipboard sliding forms under my hand, the word, transfer, swimming in front of my eyes. Something didn't sit right. Like a stone under my mattress I couldn't quite locate. I told myself I'd sort it out when I got home, that I'd ask to see every document, every change. I didn't know they'd already started, using my own shaky signature as a tool to pry my fingers off the life I'd built. So later, when Daniel looked me in the eye in my own living room and said, "You signed the papers, Mom," I knew in my bones that I hadn't, not knowingly. But in that hospital bed, with everyone telling me I was confused, it was hard not to wonder whether I was the one losing my grip on reality, or whether they were tightening theirs around me. For a few seconds after Daniel said, "You signed the papers, Mom," the words just hung there between us like smoke. I could see his mouth moving, see Lily shift her weight behind him, hear Carla clattering pans in my kitchen. But none of it made sense. "I want to see them," I said finally. My voice came out thinner than I hoped. "The papers. I want to see what I supposedly signed." Daniel sighed like I'd asked him to lift a car. "Later, Mom," he said. "You just got out of the hospital. You need to rest, not stress over legal jargon. We'll talk about it when you're stronger." "I'm strong enough to read," I shot back, though my knees were shaking. He straightened up, his expression softening into something that looked a lot like patience and felt a lot like condescension. "Just trust me, okay? We'll handle it." Behind him, Rosa laughed at something Carla said, never pausing in her unpacking. A box scraped across my floor. Someone set a stack of plates on my table like it was theirs. I pushed myself up from Frank's old recliner, the room tilting for a moment. "I'm going to my room," I said. "I need to sit down." "Good idea," Lily chimed in. "Get some rest, Mom. It's been a big day. Big day. Like we'd thrown a party." I made my way down the hall, fingers trailing along the wall I'd painted myself. When I reached my bedroom, I stopped in the doorway. My dresser drawers were half open, some of them empty. A row of cardboard boxes lined the wall, flaps gaping. My clothes were folded inside. Winter sweaters, summer blouses, mixed together like someone who didn't know me had decided what I needed. On the bed sat two neatly stacked suitcases that weren't mine. "What is this?" I whispered. Carla's teenage daughter, Marisa, popped her head out of the bathroom between our rooms, a towel looped around her shoulders. "Oh," she said. "We're just getting organized. Mom said I can use the guest room since it's closer to the bathroom." "The guest room," I repeated. That's next to my room," she shrugged. "There wasn't really anywhere else. Grandma and Grandpa took the upstairs room because of the light. Mom and Dad have the back one. They said it's safer for you downstairs anyway. Fewer stairs. Prefer downstairs." My tongue felt heavy in my mouth. Lily appeared behind me, as if summoned. "We were going to talk to you about it," she said quickly. "We thought maybe you could move into the den. No stairs, closer to the kitchen and bathroom. It's better for you with your breathing. And Marisa needs space to study." "The den has no windows," I said. It's where we used to keep the Christmas decorations. It's cozy, she countered, smiling. We'll make it nice. You said you don't like all that climbing anymore, remember? Maybe I had said something, offhand, about the stairs being harder. I couldn't remember. My own words were being served back to me, sharpened. I walked past her and opened my closet. Half the hangers were empty. My good church coat was gone, my suitcases taken. Panic rose in my throat. Where are my things? In storage, Lily said. We had to make space for everyone. Don't worry, nothing's gone. We're just reorganizing. Reorganizing. As if my life were a cluttered drawer. I went to the kitchen for a glass of water, trying to slow my breathing. The cabinets looked wrong. The mugs were in the wrong place. My favorite teapot, the blue one Frank bought me for our 20th anniversary, was nowhere to be seen. In its place on the stove sat a dented metal kettle that whistled shrilly. Where's my teapot? I asked, louder than I intended. Rosa didn't look up from the cutting board. We put away some of the old stuff, she said. It was chipped. This one is better for a big family. It wasn't chipped, I said. I would know. She smiled without warmth. Maybe it was the medication talking, Mija. You've been through a lot. That became the refrain. When I protested about the boxes in my room, Lily tilted her head. You told us you wanted help, remember? That you were tired of managing everything by yourself. When I asked why my photographs had been moved, why my mother's small painting was in the hallway, and some gaudy beach photo had its place in the living room, Rosa said, we were all here when you told Daniel you were done dealing with the house. You said you wanted to rest and let the young ones decide. I never said that. I insisted. Sometimes when people are sick, they forget, Lily replied calmly. It's okay. We're not taking anything from you. We're helping you manage it. Helping. That word began to feel like a threat. One afternoon, when the house was quiet, I decided to make a list of my important things, documents, jewelry, keys. I went to the little drawer in the buffet where I kept my checkbook, my savings account passbook, the folder with my will and the deed copy. Frank had made me promise, keep copies in the house, just in case. The drawer was empty except for a stray rubber band and a dried-up pen. My heart thudded in my ears. I checked the other drawers, the usual hiding spots. Nothing. I went to my bedroom, looked in the box under the bed where I'd kept old tax forms. Empty. I found Daniel in the hallway, scrolling his phone. Where are my papers? I demanded. My checkbook, my documents. They're gone. He looked up slowly. I put them somewhere safe, he said. With all the confusion lately, it's better if I handle the bills. One less thing for you to worry about. I want them back, I said. They're mine. He chuckled, as if I'd made a joke. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded 20, and pressed it into my hand. If you need cash for something, just ask, he said. Here's a little for now. Don't stress. I stared at the bill, then at him. I'm not a child, I said quietly. You're recovering, he replied. Let us take care of you. If you keep getting yourself worked up like this, we might need to talk about a nursing home. For your safety. Nursing home. The words hit like a slap. That night, when everyone finally settled, I went into my closet and shut the door. On the top shelf, behind an old sewing basket, was a box they hadn't found yet. Inside was my old flip phone, the one I used before Daniel insisted on upgrading me. I'd kept it charged out of habit. My hands shook as I flipped it open and scrolled through the tiny numbers until I found Janet. She'd been my friend since we were both young wives walking to church together, sharing recipes and worries. If anyone would believe me, it was her. She answered on the third ring. Hello, Janet, it's me, I whispered. It's Martha! Martha! Oh, thank God. I've been so worried.
How are you? Are you home?
Yes, but... My voice cracked. Something's wrong. Daniel, he says I signed my house over. Lily's family is here, and they've moved everything, and my papers are gone. What? That doesn't sound right at all, she cut in, her voice sharpening. Slow down. Did you ever sign anything about the house? In the hospital I signed things, I said. They said it was for the doctors, the insurance. But a nurse said he was talking about transferring the deed. And now they say I agreed to all this and I don't remember. The closet door creaked. I snapped my mouth shut. Carla's voice floated in from the bedroom. Martha, You in here. Dinner's almost ready. I swallowed hard. I have to go, I whispered. I'll call you again. Martha, listen to me, Janet said quickly. You need to get those papers. Copy anything you can. This isn't right. You're not crazy. Before I could answer, Carla pulled the closet door open. She stared at the phone in my hand, one eyebrow raised. Oh, she said. There you are. Who are you talking to? No one, I said, snapping the phone shut and tucking it into my sweater pocket. Just checking something. She smirked. Gossiping old ladies, she muttered, then raised her voice slightly. You shouldn't stress yourself like that. Lily says too much phone time isn't good for your blood pressure. Maybe we should keep it in the kitchen, so you don't overdo it. Later, I found the old phone gone from my pocket. No one admitted to taking it. A few days after that, Lily announced she'd arranged a home visit. It's just a little check-up, she said. A doctor, or maybe a social worker, to make sure you're okay. They do this all the time. When the woman arrived, badge on her shirt, clipboard in hand, she smiled wide. Hey, Mrs. Collins. I'm just here to see how you're doing at home after your hospital stay. Before I could answer, Lily stepped in. We're so glad you came, she said warmly. She's been so confused since the hospital. Forgetting conversations, getting agitated. We're doing what we can, but it's been a lot. Daniel nodded solemnly. She keeps saying we moved her things without telling her. He added. But we talked about it. She said she was tired of managing the house. Sometimes she mixes things up. I do not, I began, heat rising in my face. I woke up and my room was half-packed. No one asked me. The woman turned to me. Have you been feeling more forgetful lately? She asked gently. Any trouble keeping track of time or conversations? I forget small things sometimes, I admitted. Where I left my glasses. But I would remember if I told my son he could take over my house. Lily gave a little laugh, shaking her head. She's been so stressed, she told the visitor. After that pneumonia, it's understandable. She'll say one thing one day and the opposite the next. We're just trying to keep things stable. Rosa chimed in from the doorway. In our culture, elders rest and let the younger ones make decisions, she said, voice soft. We don't want her to worry. We take responsibility now. Every time I opened my mouth, someone's voice slid over mine, painting me as tired, confused, difficult. By the time the woman left, she'd written something on her form about supportive family and monitoring cognitive changes. I'll make a note of your concerns, she told me kindly at the door. But it's good your son is so involved. Not everyone is that lucky. Lucky. That word tasted sour. That evening at dinner we all sat around my table, though it didn't feel like mine anymore. Rosa ladled out big portions of stew for everyone, the ladle dipping shallowly when it reached my bowl. I got more broth, fewer chunks. No one seemed to notice. They talked over my head about renovating the kitchen, knocking out this wall, repainting that one. Carla pulled out her phone to show Lily pictures of some open concept layout she liked. Once everything's really settled, Lily said, we could refinish the floors. Maybe get someone to redo the bathroom. Daniel looked over at me, a teasing glint in his eye. Mom, you wouldn't mind if we painted over that ugly wallpaper you like in the hallway, right? He said. It's our house now. Time for an update. The words hit me like a physical blow. Our house now. I felt tears spill before I could stop them. They burned hot tracks down my cheeks, and my fork clattered against the plate. Conversation stopped for a beat. Then Carla sighed dramatically. Here we go, she muttered. Martha, please, Rosa said, sounding more annoyed than concerned. The kids are just planning. Don't upset yourself. I lived in this house before any of you knew it existed, I said, my voice shaking. Your plans, your decisions, you act like I'm already gone. Daniel's jaw tightened. No one said that, he replied. You're twisting everything. This is what I mean about you getting worked up. I'm upset because you took my home, I said. And now you're talking about tearing it apart while I sit here like a guest. He pushed his chair back. We're done talking about this at dinner, he said. You need to calm down. Do you want to make yourself sick again? No one reached for my hand. No one offered a tissue. They went back to talking about paint colors while I dabbed at my eyes with my napkin and tried to swallow around the lump in my throat. Later that night, I lay awake in the cozy den they'd moved me into. 4 walls, no windows, my bed shoved against a corner like an afterthought. I could hear their voices through the floorboards, drifting up from the kitchen. Once everything's finalized, we can refinance and pay off my parents' debts, Lily was saying. Her voice was hushed but clear. Daniel answered lower. It's already co-owned. The quitclaim is filed. We just need to wait a bit before we do anything big. Co-owned. Quitclaim. Words I didn't fully understand but knew I should have been part of. There was a pause, then Lily again sharper. You told me your mom wouldn't live longer than a few years anyway. We can't sit around waiting forever while my parents struggle. The sentence sliced through me like ice. I lay there perfectly still, the thin blanket pulled up to my chin, my heart thudding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. You don't have to say it like that, Daniel muttered. I'm doing this for all of us. She's fine. For now, Lily repeated. Just don't lose your nerve, Daniel. Once this is done, it'll all be worth it. Their footsteps moved away. A cabinet closed. The refrigerator hummed. In that dark little room, staring at the ceiling I couldn't see, something inside me shifted. The fog of confusion, the shame of being called forgetful, the fear of being pushed into a nursing home. It all concentrated into a single, cold point. They thought I was finished. They thought I was too old, too weak, too grateful for scraps to fight back. They thought I wouldn't notice what they were doing until it was too late. They were wrong. They'd buried me under paperwork and pills, but I was still here. I still knew my own mind, and I still had one friend outside those walls who believed me. Lying there in that windowless box they called safer. I made myself a promise I would find out exactly what they had done. I would get those papers. And I would not go quietly out of the home Frank and I built. The promise I made myself in that windowless little den kept me awake more nights than my coughing did. I didn't know how I'd fight them, or with what, but I knew I couldn't just sit and let them erase me. The first crack of light came from the same place I'd always had in my life, a good friend from church. I still had my newer phone, the one Daniel upgraded. Me too, but they watched that one. So one morning, when the house was bustling, kids getting ready for school, Rosa fussing with lunches, Lily and Carla arguing over car keys, I slipped into the bathroom off the den, turned on the fan for cover, and texted Janet. House full. Come, by accident, tomorrow morning. Bring soup. Need to talk. Don't call. My hands shook as I hit send. I deleted the message right after, my heart pounding harder than it should for such a small act. It felt like I was plotting a prison break instead of a visit from an old friend. The next day, by some small mercy, the house emptied. Daniel left for work, Lily took her parents to some appointment. Carla herded the kids out the front door with backpacks and complaints. The silence that followed felt strange, like a stranger in my own home. Not 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I shuffled to the foyer, my cane clicking on the floor. When I opened the door, there was Janet, standing there with a pot in one hand and her big canvas purse in the other, breath puffing in the cool air. "Well, look who's home!" she said loudly, in that bright, performative voice church ladies use when they know others might be listening. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop off some of my famous chicken soup. I almost cried from relief just seeing her face. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Quickly. She crossed the threshold, and her smile dropped the moment the door clicked shut. "What on earth is going on in here?" she whispered, eyes scanning the unfamiliar shoes, the strange coats, the rearranged furniture. "It's a long story," I said. "Come to the den." We went down the hall to my little box of a room. She stopped in the doorway, taking it in. The twin bed against the wall, the single lamp, my dresser squeezed in like an afterthought. "They put you in here," she breathed. "Martha, it's cozy," I said, trying for humor and failing. My throat burned. "Close the door." She did. Then she set the soup on the small table and sat on the edge of the bed, turning to face me, knees almost touching mine. "Start from the beginning," she said. "And don't leave anything out." So I told her. About the hospital, the forms, the woman with the clipboard, the way Daniel and Lily spoke for me when the social worker came. About waking up to find my room half-packed, my documents gone, my old phone disappearing from my pocket. About the words I'd heard through the floorboards. Co-owning, refinance, she can't live there forever. Janet's eyes got sharper with every sentence. By the time I was done, the only thing soft about her was the hand she laid over mine. They can't just take your house, she said. That's not how it works. They say I signed it over. I whispered that I agreed to all of this and just don't remember. Sometimes I wonder if I really am losing it. She shook her head hard. Martha, I've known you for, 35 years. You forget where you left your glasses sometimes, not what you did with your house. You are not crazy, and you are not senile. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Just hearing someone say that, it loosened something tight inside me. Did you ever sign anything about the deed? She asked. Anything that said quitclaim, a transfer of interest, power of attorney. Those words. I closed my eyes, trying to picture the forms. No, I said slowly. Not that I saw. They said it was for the hospital. For Daniel to talk to the doctors and the insurance. I remember seeing medical power of attorney on one. But there were so many pages. My eyes were blurry. And Daniel was rushing me. She frowned. And your documents are all gone. Every one, I said. Will, deed copy, bank statements. He says he put them somewhere safe. Janet sat back, thinking. Okay, she said finally. Look, my son Peter. He works in the county clerk's office downtown. Everything's digital now. Property records, deeds, it's all public. If they filed something, we can see it. Hope sparked, small but real. You can find out who owns my house, I asked. She nodded. We can find the deed, the latest one. If there was a transfer, it'll be on file. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She checked it, then stood up reluctantly. I can't stay long, she said. I told my daughter I was just dropping something off. But I'll talk to Peter as soon as I get home. If there's anything fishy, we'll know. Fear prickled at the back of my neck. What if Daniel finds out? He won't, she said firmly. Not from me. You just keep your head down for now. Don't confront him until we have something solid. Promise me, I nodded. I promise. She hugged me, hard, smelling of lavender and laundry soap. Hang on, Martha, she murmured. We're going to get to the bottom of this. After she left, the house swallowed the sound of her footsteps as if it were glad to be rid of an intruder. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall, counting the minutes until I'd know something, anything. It didn't take long. The next afternoon, when the house was momentarily empty again, my phone buzzed with a number I knew by heart. Martha, Janet said, voice tight. Are you alone? Yes, I whispered. For the moment. Okay. I'm at the library computer. Peter walked me through the system. We pulled up your address. Papers rustled on her end. There's a deed recorded about 3 weeks after you were admitted. It's a quitclaim deed from you to Daniel Collins and Lillian Collins, as joint tenants with right of survivorship. The words were like foreign objects dropped into my ear. Quitclaim. I echoed. It means you gave up your interest to them, she said. At least on paper, it's signed with your name. There's a notary seal. They filed it at the clerk's office. My hand went numb around the phone. They already did it, I said. While I was in the hospital. I'm emailing you a photo Peter took of the record, she said. Check your messages. I'd never been so grateful that Lily had helped me get a smartphone. I fumbled through the icons until I found Janet's email. When the little thumbnail popped up, my stomach dropped. There was my name, in my own looping handwriting, on a document I had never seen in my life. The image zoomed in shaky when I pinched the screen, but I could still make out the words. I, Martha Collins, hereby convey all right, title, and interest in the property located at my address, my house, my life. And under that, the notary's seal. The name was vaguely familiar. I realized after a moment it was the woman from the hospital admissions office. The one with the nice blazer and efficient smile. She must have slid that deed in with the other forms like a thief tucking something into an open bag. There's more, Janet said. We also found a durable power of attorney. It gives Daniel broad authority over your finances, property, everything. That one was filed the same week. For a second, I couldn't speak. The room seemed to tilt, and my heart hammered against my ribs. Are you okay? She asked. I recognized the signature. I managed. It's mine, But I never read that. They said it was just for the doctors. For bills. My voice cracked. They used my own hand against me. Silence hung on the line for a beat, broken only by the library's muffled hum on her end and the refrigerator on mine. I talked to someone at Senior Services, Janet said softly. A legal aid attorney. I didn't use your name yet. I just described the situation. He said if you signed while you were heavily medicated, confused, or not properly informed, those documents can be challenged. But it won't be easy. It'll take evidence. And a fight. A fight. I thought of Daniel as a little boy, curled up on the couch with a fever, his hand in mine. I thought of him now, downstairs, talking about refinancing. Once everything's finalized. My son would never. The words died in my mouth. They didn't fit anymore. No, I said, almost to myself. He already did. Janet took a breath. The attorney I spoke to. Harris, his name is. He said he'd be willing to talk to you, pro bono, just to see what can be done. You'd have to be careful, though. He said not to tip your hand until you understand your options. Can you talk on the phone where they won't hear you? In the den with the fan on, I said. They can't hear much over that. They think I nap all day in here. Good, she said. I'll set it up. I'll tell him you're a lady from church who needs advice. He doesn't need to know every family drama yet. Later that evening, after another tense dinner where no one met my eyes, I went back to the den and turned on the rattling old fan. I dialed the number Janet had sent. Harris Law, this is David Harris, a man's voice answered. Mr. Harris, I said, keeping my voice low, my name is Martha Collins. A friend of mine, Janet Miller, said you might be able to answer a few questions for me. Of course, Mrs. Collins, he said. His tone shifted, businesslike but not unkind. Janet gave me a brief overview. I'd like to ask you a few specifics if that's all right. Then I can tell you what your options might be. He asked about dates. When I'd gone into the hospital. When I thought I'd signed the first batch of forms. How long after that the woman with the clipboard had come. He asked what medications I'd been on, whether I remembered feeling clear or foggy. I was on oxygen and something that made me drowsy, I said. There were days I couldn't remember the nurse's name, let alone fine print. Did anyone sit down and read the documents to you slowly, in plain language? He asked. Explain each one separately, especially anything involving property or broad financial powers.
No,
I said. She flipped through them and said they were standard. My son said it was just so he could talk to my doctors and the insurance. I trusted him. Do you have any copies of what you signed? He asked. No, I said bitterly. My son took all my papers. But my friend's son found the recorded deed in the power of attorney at the clerk's office. I've seen a photo of the deed. It has my signature. All right, he said. I could hear a pen scratching. Here's what you need to do, quietly. First, get copies of everything you can. Those recordings your friend made from the clerk's office. Any medical records from your hospital stay, especially notes about your mental status and medications. Second, start keeping a written log of what's happening in the house now. Dates, times, what's said, what's been moved or taken. Third, do not confront your son or his wife yet. Not until we have a clear picture. Why? I asked. Don't I have a right to tell them I know? You do, he said. But forewarned is forearmed, and right now they're armed. You're not. If you tip them off, they could hide or destroy evidence, or move to have you declared incompetent. We don't want that. The idea of my own child trying to have me declared incompetent turned my stomach. One more thing, he added. If it's proven that your son, while holding power of attorney, transferred your property primarily for his own benefit, especially if you were impaired at the time, that's not just a civil issue. It may fall under criminal elder financial abuse in this state. I gripped the phone tighter. I repeated. Yes, he said. It's serious. I'm not saying we're there yet, but based on what you've told me, it's a possibility. For now, gather, don't battle. Let Janet help you. When you feel safe doing so, we'll meet in person and go over everything. When the call ended, I sat in the humming half-dark of the den, the fan rattling overhead, my heart pounding. Up until then, I'd told myself Daniel was weak, easily swayed, thoughtless. Maybe greedy, yes, but not malicious, not cruel. In that moment, holding the phone to my ear with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling, I realized something colder. My own son might not just be a disappointment. He might, in the eyes of the law, be a criminal. Once I heard the word, criminal, from Harris's mouth, something in me hardened. Fear was still there, of course. Fear of being thrown out, of being shoved into some home and labeled crazy. But it had company now, a thin, steady line of resolve. We spoke again a few days later on the phone with the old bathroom fan roaring like an airplane engine to cover my voice. The house was quieter that morning. Lily had taken her parents to the clinic. Carla was on a school run and Daniel had left early for work. "All right, Mrs. Collins," Harris said. "If you're ready, we need to move from shock into strategy. We're going to play this smart. No yelling, no threats. Just facts." "I'm ready," I said, though my hands were damp on the receiver. "Tell me what to do." "Step 1, he said. "We need your medical records from the hospital, especially around the dates those documents were signed. I need to know what medications you were on, and if any notes mention confusion or drowsiness." "How do I get those?" I asked. Daniel was handling everything with the hospital. "You have the right to your own records," he replied. "Janet can help. She can go to the records office with a release you sign, or in many cases, they can be requested online or by mail. I'll email Janet a template for the authorization." I pictured Janet marching into that office like a little general and almost smiled. "Step 2, he continued. "Why need copies of all relevant legal documents, the recorded deed, the power of attorney, any so-called care agreements they might have talked you into. You've already seen the deed, but I want certified copies. Janet's son can get those from the clerk's office." "He's already pulled them up once," I said. "I saw the pictures." "Good." "Step 3, Harris said, his voice steady. "From this moment forward, document everything that happens in that house that supports a pattern of exploitation. Restrictions, threats, control of your finances, attempts to isolate you. Dates, times, who said what. Keep a written log." "I don't have anywhere safe," I said quietly. "They go through my things." "Hide it where they won't think to look," he suggested. "In a sewing basket, an old cookbook, the lining of a coat, somewhere that's yours but looks unimportant. And if you can safely record certain conversations on your phone without putting yourself at risk, that could be invaluable." He paused. "Step 4. We need a witness who saw your condition at the time of signing. You mentioned a nurse who commented on your son being proactive." "Yes," I said. "She was on my floor, kind eyes. Carla, I think her name was, too. If she is willing to state that you were confused, heavily medicated, or not fully understanding when these papers were signed, that will help. Janet might be a better person to approach her, so your family doesn't get suspicious." The idea of all these moving pieces made my head swim, but it was a different kind of dizziness than the hospital. This was purpose, not poison. After we hung up, I called Janet from the den. "He wants me to be a runner," she said when I relayed Harris's plan. "I can do that. Lord knows I've run enough church bake sales. This is just higher stakes." "Be careful," I said. "I don't want them to drag you into this mess." She snorted. "Too late. Consider me dragged. I'll go to the hospital records office tomorrow. Peter already said he can get certified copies from the clerk's office. And we'll make you that log." True to her word, within days she'd done more for me than my own son had in months. She visited the hospital and asked for the nurse I'd described. As it turned out, the woman, Nurse Carla, same name, different person from the one living in my house, remembered me. "I'll never forget your son," she told Janet. "Always on the phone about handling her affairs. He seemed very eager." According to Janet, that's the word she used. Janet explained, carefully, that I was concerned about some documents I'd signed while heavily sedated. The nurse's face tightened. "I can't give you everything," she said, "but your friend can request her own chart. What I can tell you is that on the date I saw a notary at her bedside, Martha was listed as drowsy, oriented to person only, in my notes. And she was on a fairly strong sedative at the time. She later wrote that in a memo Harris would use." Janet walked out of that hospital with a release form and the knowledge that I hadn't been imagining things. Within a week, she had a thick envelope of my medical records. She dropped them off with Harris, who combed through every line and highlighted the ones that mattered: medication names, dosages, nursing notes about confusion the very day my quitclaim deed was notarized. Meanwhile, inside the house, I became my own quiet archivist. I found an old spiral notebook in my sewing basket and tucked it under my pillow. Each night, I'd slip it out and write the day's events in small, careful script. March 4, 28. Daniel told me I was overreacting. When I asked about my checkbook, Rosa said I must have forgotten, agreeing to let them move my things. March 15. Lily suggested selling my bedroom set to make space. Daniel mentioned a nursing home again. When I remembered, I'd note the time and exact words, hearing Harris's voice in my head, no yelling. Just facts. I also started using the one bit of technology Lily had unwittingly given me, my smartphone. I figured out how to open the voice recorder app. When I sensed a conversation turning, I'd tap it on and slide the phone under my leg on the chair, or leave it on the counter while I went to get a glass of water. The one afternoon in the kitchen, I set it to record while Daniel leaned against the counter, flipping through some mail. Once everything is in our name, we can finally relax, he told Lily, not bothering to lower his voice. No more worrying about what happens if she falls or forgets to pay something. We'll just handle it. Everything is in our name. I kept stirring my tea, face neutral, while my phone quietly captured every syllable. Another time, in the living room, Rosa said in Spanish. Bless her, she forgot how much I'd picked up over the years. When she's gone, at least the house will stay in the family. Lily answered, in English for Daniel's benefit, yes, in our family. I wrote that down too. I also tested Daniel's story one evening, in a way that made me feel sly and old and more alive than I had in months. We were alone in the kitchen, the others out. I sat at the table with a cup of tea I didn't really want and furrowed my brow like I'd seen some of the ladies at church do when they forgot where they parked. Danny, I said, letting a little wobble into my voice. When did we decide to put the house in your name again? I can't quite remember the conversation. Was it before or after the pneumonia? He glanced up sharply, then forced a smile. Mom, we talked about this at the hospital. Remember? He said. Long talk, just the two of us. You said you didn't want to leave me with a mess, so you signed. You were completely clear. You even joked about finally letting go. None of that had happened. I let my eyes cloud as if searching. I don't remember joking, I murmured. I wish I remembered more. He patted my hand. That's just the pneumonia and the meds, he said. Trust me. We did the right thing. The recorder in my pocket captured it all, his long conversation. That never existed, his insistence that I'd been completely clear. More proof that he knew he needed a cover story. A week later, Janet picked me up for what everyone in the house thought was a ladies' Bible study. Instead, she drove me to a small, brick front office where Harris waited with a neat stack of papers. Mrs. Collins, he said, standing as we entered. Or can I call you Martha? Martha is fine, I said, sitting down carefully. The office smelled of paper and coffee and something like potential. Today, he said, we're going to take back some ground. He slid the first document toward me. This revokes the durable power of attorney you signed. From the moment it's executed and delivered, your son no longer has the legal authority to act on your behalf. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the pen. There was a certain poetry in using my signature, the very thing they'd exploited, as a weapon for my own defense. The second document was a new will. Under his guidance, I left everything to a revocable trust, with myself as primary beneficiary and Janet named as successor trustee. Daniel's name was noticeably absent. This doesn't have to be forever, Harris said gently, seeing my face. You can amend it if things change. But for now, it protects you. If something were to happen to you tomorrow, he wouldn't immediately benefit from what he's tried to take. The Janet acted as a witness, as did a secretary from the front desk. A notary came in with her stamp and watched me sign. You always said, get it in writing, I thought, picturing Frank with his ladder and paintbrush. Well, this time, the writing is going to save me. Afterward, Harris laid out the last pieces of the plan. Next, we wait for the certified medical records and the nurse's memo, he said. I've already reviewed the public deed and power of attorney. Once I have everything, I'll arrange for you to be evaluated by a geriatric specialist. Not to prove you're incompetent, but the opposite. We'll get an expert letter stating that at this time, you are perfectly capable of understanding legal matters, and that based on your history, you likely were not capable when they rushed those documents through. And then, I asked. Then we confront them, he said plainly. Not in your house, where they can gang up on you. Here, or in a neutral office. I'll invite them to a family meeting to clarify responsibilities. They won't think they're walking into a legal discussion until they're already sitting down. The thought of facing Daniel across a polished conference table made my stomach knot. But it also felt right. If he was going to look me in the eye and justify what he'd done, I wanted witnesses. There's one more thing, Harris said, folding his hands. Given what you've described, the isolation, the financial control, the threat of a nursing home, I've quietly contacted Adult Protective Services. I didn't use names yet, just details. They've agreed to send a caseworker for a routine elder welfare check. My heart stuttered. They'll come here, to the house. Yes, he said. They'll present it as standard follow-up after a hospitalization. They'll see where you're sleeping, who else is living there, how decisions are being made. If they see what I suspect they will, their report will support our case. I imagined Lily's face when a stranger with a badge knocked on our door, asking questions she wasn't prepared for. I pictured Daniel trying to charm his way through, only to have his words compared against my records and recordings. We're not just going to challenge a deed, Martha, Harris said quietly. We're going to expose a pattern. Step by careful step. On the drive home, Janet gripped the wheel like she was holding the whole plan together. Let them keep thinking you're weak, she said. That's how you'll get the truth out of them. They won't be careful around someone they've dismissed. Back in my little den, I sat on the bed and smoothed my hand over the quilt. For the first time since I came home from the hospital, the room didn't feel entirely like a cage. They thought they'd boxed me in. They'd forgotten I still had people in my corner. They'd forgotten I could listen, learn, and plan. And soon, very soon, other people, people with badges, titles, and the weight of the law, would be listening too. The knock on the door came on a Wednesday afternoon, just as Rosa was pulling a tray of something fragrant out of the oven, and the kids were arguing over the remote. It sounded firm, official somehow, 3 even raps that made my spine straighten in my chair. I'll get it, Lily called, wiping her hands on a towel. She smoothed her hair as she walked past me, pasted on the smile she used for neighbors and church ladies. From my spot at the table, I could see the entryway. Lily opened the door, and a woman in a neat blazer and slacks stood there, a leather folder tucked under one arm, badge clipped to her lapel. Good afternoon, she said. I'm Ms. Patel with Adult Protective Services. We're doing routine follow-up visits for older adults recently hospitalized. Is this the residence of Martha Collins? For a second, the air in the room seemed to thin. I watched Lily's fingers tighten on the doorknob before she let out a light laugh. Yes, this is Martha's house, she said. We weren't expecting anyone. It's a standard welfare check after a significant hospital stay. Ms. Patel replied pleasantly. Just to make sure everything's going well at home, may I come in? Lily hesitated just long enough for me to see it, then stepped aside. Of course, we're all here. Come in. As Ms. Patel walked in, her eyes moved quickly but not rudely over the scene: Rosa at the stove, Carla scrolling her phone on my couch, the kids sprawled on the floor where my coffee table used to be. When her gaze reached me at the kitchen table, she gave a small nod. You must be Mrs. Collins, she said.
Yes,
I answered. Call me Martha. She came closer, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, her palm warm. How are you feeling since your hospitalization? She asked. Better than I was, I said, which was true enough. Still getting my strength back. Before I could say more, Lily slipped in beside us. She's doing so well, she said quickly. We're making sure she takes all her meds, eats properly, all of that. The doctors said she needed supervision, so we moved in to help. That's wonderful, Ms. Patel said. Her tone didn't change, but I saw her eyes slide from Lily to me, inviting a response. It's crowded, I said carefully. A lot of people, all at once, and there have been a lot of changes. Changes. Ms. Paydell prompted gently. Oh, just little things, Lily cut in. Reorganizing the kitchen, making space. She gets confused sometimes, so change can be hard. But it's all for her safety. Ms. Patel glanced at her folder. Would it be all right if I spoke with Martha alone for a few minutes? She asked. It's part of the standard process. Lily's jaw tightened a fraction. We don't hide anything from each other, she said. We're very open as a family. I'm sure, Ms. Patel said smoothly, but these questions are personal. It's best practice to give the elder some privacy. I spoke up before Lily could protest further. We can talk in my room, I said. The den. It's quieter there. Of course, Ms. Patel said. Led the way. I pushed myself up, my cane clicking on the tile, and she followed me down the hall. When we stepped into the den, she stopped for a moment, taking in the cramped space my narrow bed, the lack of windows, the boxes still stacked along one wall. This is your bedroom now, she asked. Yes, I said. It used to be a den. We stored decorations here. My old room is upstairs. She looked back toward the hallway, where light from the larger bedroom spilled across the carpet, then turned to me. Martha, she said quietly, I'm going to ask you some direct questions. You can answer however you feel. Do you feel that you can make decisions freely about your home and your money? My throat tightened. This was it, the moment Harris had prepared me for. I used to, I said. No, I don't know. I chose my words carefully. I don't know where my checkbook is anymore, or my important papers. My son handles everything now. Even my mail. She wrote something in her folder. Did you choose to have him do that? She asked. Or did it happen gradually? In the hospital, they brought papers, I said. They said it was just to let him talk to the doctors and insurance. I was on a lot of medication. I signed where they pointed. I never saw anything that said deed. But when I came home, they told me I had signed the house over. And everyone moved in. Her eyes sharpened. You don't recall agreeing to transfer ownership of your home? No, I said firmly. I remember telling them I will left everything to him someday. Not now. Not like this. She nodded, then asked about my daily life. Who cooked? Who decided when I saw friends, whether I could come and go as I pleased? I told her about the missing documents, the allowance of cash, the talk of nursing homes whenever I argued. Do you feel safe here? She asked softly. Emotionally. Physically. I don't think they'll hit me, if that's what you mean, I said. But I feel trapped. Like if I disagree too much, I'll find myself in a place with locked doors and no way back. She closed her folder for a moment. Your friend Janet contacted us, she said. She provided copies of a deed and a power of attorney, as well as some information about your hospitalization and medications. Given what you've told me, we will open an investigation into possible financial exploitation. The words washed over me like equal parts comfort and dread. Investigation. Exploitation. I wasn't crazy, but I was in real danger. Will they know you're investigating? I asked. Not right away, she said. Officially, this was a routine welfare check. I'll file my report, and my supervisor will determine next steps. We may request records from the hospital and the clerk's office. At some point, your family will become aware that APS is involved. I want you to be prepared for that. I nodded. I've spoken to an attorney, I said. I'm not alone. That's good, she said. Very good. We walked back to the kitchen together. The moment Lily saw her folder close, she was at our side. So, she asked, too brightly. Everything look all right. We do our best, you know. It's a lot of work, but she's family. Ms. Patel smiled her professional smile. Thank you for your time, she said. I'll just need your signatures on this acknowledgement that I visited. She had Lily and Daniel scribble on a form, then tucked it away. As soon as the door shut behind her, the temperature in the house seemed to rise 10 degrees. Lily whirled on me. What did you tell her? She demanded, the sweetness stripped from her voice. I answered her questions, I said, honestly. You called them, didn't you? Daniel snapped. You called the government on us? I didn't call anyone, I said, which was technically true. They said it was routine because of my age and the hospital. Don't play dumb, he shouted, louder than I'd ever heard him. After everything we've done for you, you stab us in the back. You're turning strangers against your own family, Mom. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers finding the smooth rectangle of my phone. Before they came in, I'd opened the recorder and tapped it on. Now it sat there, quietly capturing every word. Family doesn't lie, steal, and lock up checkbooks, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Family doesn't move into your home and push you into a closet so they can relax. Once everything is in their name. Lily's face went white. She's twisting everything, she said quickly, glancing at Daniel. We had to do it. My parents had nowhere else to go. Shut up, Daniel hissed at her. Too late. You're not helping. There it was. The word had slipped out, had to do it. Not help, not protect. Had to. I took a slow breath. I know about the quitclaim deed, I said. I know about the power of attorney. I know I was listed as drowsy and confused the day you pushed those papers in front of me. I've seen my signature on a document I never read. Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You don't understand how this works, he said finally. We did what was best for everyone. You were grateful in the hospital. You said you wanted this. No, I said. I said everything would go to you someday. Not that you could strip it from me while I was half sedated. He took a step toward me, face flushed. If you keep this up, we'll have no choice but to put you somewhere where professionals can deal with you. He spat. You're making yourself sick, and now you're bringing social workers into our business. Our business. I cut in. This is my business. My house. My life. For the first time since I'd come home, I wasn't the one backing away. And for your information, I added, I haven't just spoken to a social worker. I've spoken to an attorney. A good one. He has copies of the deed, the power of attorney, and my hospital records. If you try to put me in a nursing home or touch my accounts again, I will file charges for elder abuse. The room went still. Even the kids who'd been peeking around the corner went quiet. You wouldn't, Daniel said, but there was fear under the bluster. Wouldn't I asked. You already did what I thought you never would. Lily's voice broke in high and panicked.
We had to do it?
She cried again. The landlord was kicking my parents out. We couldn't afford rent and a mortgage anywhere, and you were just sitting on this house. I was living in this house. I snapped. Not sitting on it like a dragon on treasure. You never asked to stay. You just took. Daniel grabbed her arm. Nuff, he muttered. Go in the other room. She yanked free. No, you wanted this, she threw at him. You said your mom wouldn't live more than a few years anyway. You said it would all be ours and we'd finally be secure. Lily. His voice cracked like a whip. Shut up. My phone, safe and silent in my pocket, caught every syllable. That night, while the house simmered with anger, Harris made his move. He called Daniel directly, introducing himself as my attorney. I think there's been some confusion about Martha's property and care arrangements, he said, his voice calm. I'd like to invite you and your wife to a sit-down meeting to clarify ownership and responsibilities. It's in everyone's interest to resolve this civilly. I heard Daniel's sigh through the thin wall of the den, his tone vacillating between defensiveness and false charm. There's nothing to clarify, he said. We already took care of the legal stuff. Refusing to meet will not make this go away. Harris replied, his patience seemingly endless. It will only strengthen the case against you, especially now that APS is involved. I strongly advise you to come in and have a calm adult discussion. In the end, Daniel agreed. He still thought he could talk his way through. He still underestimated me. The night before the meeting, he floated the idea of, maybe it's time Mom tried that assisted living place. Loud enough for me to hear from the hall. My stomach lurched, but Janet was there, stubborn as a bulldog. She insisted on staying over, for company, bringing an overnight bag and a pie and daring Lily with her eyes to object. Late that night, when everyone was finally behind their doors, I took a small cloth bag from my closet. Inside were the few things I couldn't bear to lose again: Frank's watch, scratched and worn but still ticking, our wedding photograph in its simple frame, the faded house key we'd used the day we moved in. I slipped the bag into Janet's large purse. Just in case, I whispered. In case of what? She asked. In case this house stops being mine for a while, I said. I'm not leaving him behind again. A morning came too quickly. My hands trembled as I buttoned my blouse, but when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a confused old woman. I saw someone who had survived worse and was still standing. At Harris's office, we sat at the same table as before, but this time I wasn't alone. Janet on one side, Harris at the head, his folders neatly stacked. Daniel and Lily came in late together, faces set in matching wary expressions. "Thank you for coming," Harris said, as if this were a polite tea instead of a reckoning. He opened his folder and laid out 3 separate piles. A certified copy of the quitclaim deed, the durable power of attorney, and my highlighted medical records. Next to them, he placed a small digital recorder and a legal pad. "Before we talk about the future of this house," he said, folding his hands, "we need to talk about what you two did while Martha was sedated in a hospital bed." The room went very quiet. For a long moment after Harris spoke, nobody moved. The only sound in that little conference room was the faint hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of the clock on the wall. Daniel was the first to recover. He leaned back in his chair, tried on a relaxed smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Look," he said, spreading his hands, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not villains here. My mom was very sick. We were just trying to simplify things, avoid probate, save on taxes. You know how complicated estates can get." Lily nodded quickly. "Exactly," she chimed in. "We stepped up when she needed us. We moved in. We've been taking care of her, paying bills, doing repairs. We thought it was the responsible thing to do. We've been selflessly caring for an aging parent. Not whatever you're implying." Harris listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When Daniel finally ran out of words, he reached for the first stack of papers. "I appreciate that you both have an explanation," he said calmly. "Now let me show you the facts." He slid a set of certified hospital records across the table, turning them so Daniel and Lily could read. Yellow highlights glowed on certain lines. "These are Martha's charts from the hospital," he said. "Specifically, the week your quitclaim deed and durable power of attorney were executed. Here," he tapped one line, "we have notes from the nurse, patient drowsy, oriented to person only, on high-dose sedatives. Confused about date and time. That's the day your notary friend witnessed her signature on a document transferring all right, title and interest in this house to you." He let that sink in, then slid the next document forward, the deed itself. "This is the quitclaim," he said. "I've confirmed with the clerk's office that it was recorded 3 weeks into Martha's hospital stay. The notary used their work address, not the hospital, which is unusual but not unheard of. What concerns me more are the signatures." He placed a printout of Martha's signature from an old, uncontested document beside the deed signature. "Martha's writing here," he pointed to the older one, "is steady, consistent. On the deed, it's shaky, malformed, indicative of someone under duress or impairment. Combine that with the medical notes, and you have a problem." Lily shifted in her seat. Daniel's jaw clenched. "And then there's the power of attorney," Harris continued, sliding the next set of papers across. "It gives Daniel broad authority to handle all of Martha's financial affairs. Again, signed during a period when her chart repeatedly describes her as drowsy, confused, and on sedating medication." Daniel opened his mouth, but Harris raised a hand. "I'm not finished," he said. His voice was still mild, but there was steel under it now. He reached into his folder and took out a small digital recorder, setting it in the middle of the table. "Martha has been making her own record of what's happened since she returned home," he said. "With witnesses present and with your knowledge in some cases. I'd like to play you a few excerpts." He pressed a button. My own kitchen came out of that little box, tinny but clear. "Once everything is in our name, we can finally relax," Daniel's voice said, unmistakable. "No more worrying about what happens if she falls or forgets to pay something. We'll just handle it." The blood drained from Daniel's face. Harris pressed another button. Lily's voice filled the room, higher, agitated. "We had to do it. My parents had nowhere else to go. You said your mom wouldn't live more than a few years anyway. You said it would all be ours and we'd finally be secure." Lily flinched like she'd been slapped. She shot a look at Daniel that was pure panic. Harris stopped the recording. "Taken together," he said quietly, "these documents, these medical notes, And these statements paint a very clear picture. Whatever story you're telling yourselves about helping, the law has another word for it. He folded his hands. Exploitation. Lily found her voice first. You told me she agreed. She burst out, turning on Daniel. You said this was all above board, that she wanted us to move in? That it was just a formality? I did what you pushed me to do? Daniel snapped back. You and your parents wouldn't shut up about needing a house. About being sick of throwing money away on rent. You're the one who kept saying, she can't live there forever. I thought it was legal. Lily cried. I thought you'd talked it all through with her. You said she was fine when she signed. You said she joked about letting go. How was I supposed to know she was drugged out of her mind? They were so busy tearing into each other that for a moment they forgot I was there. It was like watching strangers in my son's skin and my daughter-in-law's clothes. My heart hurt, but not with the confused, helpless ache it had before. This was sharper, cleaner. Harris let them go for a few seconds, then cleared his throat. Whether one of you pushed more than the other is something you can argue about later, he said. From the court's perspective, you both benefited. You both moved into her home, took control of her finances and isolated her. You both used a power of attorney and a deed signed under questionable circumstances for your own advantage. He took a breath. Adult Protective Services is already aware of this situation. They have my client's medical records, the deed, and my preliminary notes. If Martha chooses, we can file a civil suit to void the deed based on lack of capacity and undue influence, and we can also provide our evidence to the district attorney for possible criminal charges of elder financial abuse. Silence fell like a blanket. Even the ticking clock seemed to hold its breath. Daniel swallowed. We were just trying to secure a future for our family, he said finally, but the words sounded hollow. I am your family, I said quietly. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. Or I was, until you decided my life's work was a problem to solve, not a gift I gave you. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I saw my little boy's face under the stubble and worry lines. It almost undid me. Almost. I would have helped you. I continued. If you'd come to me and said, Mom, Lily's parents are in trouble, can they stay with us for a while? I would have opened my doors. I would have made up beds, cooked extra, done what I could. But you didn't ask. You decided. You took. You used my sickness as your opportunity. Lily wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. We'll never recover from this financially, she muttered, almost to herself. Maybe now you know how it feels to lose everything, I thought, but I didn't say it. Some truths don't need to be spoken out loud. Harris picked up a pen. Here are your options, he said, businesslike again. Option 1, Martha pursues a full civil and criminal process. We file in court to void the deed and power of attorney. APS continues its investigation. The district attorney reviews our evidence. You risk losing not just the house, but also facing charges that could affect your freedom and your employment for years. He slid a second document across the table, this one fresh and blank except for a few typed paragraphs. Option 2, he said. You sign a settlement agreement today. You acknowledge that the transfer of this property was invalid due to Martha's impaired condition. You sign the necessary documents to revert full ownership of the house back to her immediately. You agree to vacate the premises within 30 days. You further agree not to contest any future will, trust, or estate distribution Martha chooses to make. In return, she will notify APS and any relevant authorities that the matter has been resolved to her satisfaction and will not actively pursue criminal charges. Daniel's face twisted. So we just walk away with nothing? He demanded. After everything we've sacrificed. You sacrificed my security, I said. You gambled with the roof over my head. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. We made this house better, he shot back. We fixed things, we paid for groceries, You painted over my life without asking. I replied. That's not fixing, that's erasing. He pushed his chair back and stood chest heaving. I have rights too, he said. I'm her son. Being someone's son doesn't give you the right to steal from them, Harris said evenly. Whether you intended it or not, the law calls this exploitation. You can either correct it voluntarily, here and now, or have a judge correct it for you later with far less sympathy. Lily's voice trembled. We can't afford to fight a lawsuit, she whispered to Daniel. We don't have money for that. And if there are criminal charges. He rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking 10 years older. For a moment, the room was nothing but breathing and the faint scratch of Harris's pen. Finally, Daniel sagged back into his chair. What guarantees do we have? He asked. That she won't change her mind and go after us anyway. You don't? Harris said. Trust is something you forfeited. But this agreement will make it clear that Martha considers the property issue resolved. APS will still complete their assessment. Nothing can stop that. But Martha's wishes will carry significant weight. This is the most mercy you can reasonably expect. They conferred in low, urgent whispers for a minute that felt like an hour. Then Daniel picked up the pen. Fine, he said, the word coming out like it hurt. We'll sign. Lily stared at him, then at me, eyes shining with fury and something like shame. She took the pen when he handed it to her and scribbled her name with a tight jaw. Harris had them initial each page, sign the deed reversal, acknowledge the timelines. Janet watched every stroke like a hawk. When it was finally my turn, my hand barely shook as I signed the line returning my own house to me. There, Harris said, gathering the papers. As of this moment, the only legal owner of the Collins residence is once again Martha Collins. The words washed over me, not with joy exactly, but with a kind of exhausted relief. Like coming up for air after being held underwater too long. On the drive home, the silence between me and Daniel in the car was thicker than any argument we'd ever had. Lily stared out her window, arms folded, lips pressed tight. Over the next 2 weeks, the house transformed again. Boxes reappeared, this time filled with their things. The big television came down, the kids' artwork came off my walls. Rosa and Miguel avoided my eyes, moving like ghosts through the rooms. Lily didn't speak to me unless absolutely necessary. Daniel oscillated between sullen and brittle. He moved back into old patterns, coming home late, avoiding tough conversations, throwing himself into busywork. I stayed out of their way, reclaiming small territories piece by piece. My mother's cabinet came back from storage, with a scratch along one side that made my heart twinge, but it was here. My wedding photo found its way back to the mantel. On the last day, when the final box was loaded into the SUV, Daniel lingered in the driveway while Lily buckled their son into his car seat. He walked back to the porch, hands stuffed in his pockets. Mom, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I thought. He swallowed. I thought you'd be gone soon, and it wouldn't matter. I thought taking care of it early would make it easier on everyone. It was a brutal kind of honesty, and it felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. I'm still here, I said quietly. And this is still my home. You don't get to decide when I stop mattering. He flinched. For a second, I thought he might reach for me, might ask for something I wasn't sure I could give. Instead, he nodded once, eyes shining, and turned away. You need to think about what kind of man you really are, I said to his back. He paused for a heartbeat, then kept walking. The SUV pulled away, shrinking down the street until it turned the corner and disappeared. The driveway was empty again. My house stood there, a little scarred, a little worn, but mine. The house was mine again. But as I stood on that porch with the keys cool in my palm, I knew the cost had been higher than any mortgage I'd ever paid. The first morning after they left, I woke up to silence. Not the stretched thin, uncomfortable silence of people not speaking to each other, but real quiet. No cartoons blaring from the living room, no pots banging in my kitchen, no muffled arguments about who was using whose charger. Just the hum of the refrigerator, a bird outside somewhere, and my own footsteps on the floor. For a long time, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, letting the reality settle in. They were gone. With Janet's help, I started reclaiming the house one room at a time. We began in the living room. The big television and speakers were already out. The wall where they'd been was a rectangle of cleaner paint, like a shadow. We hauled my couch back in from the garage, its familiar sag of comfort. My mother's china cabinet came home from storage, with a new scratch down one side and a missing teacup. But when I ran my fingers over the glass, it felt like greeting an old friend. We found Frank's recliner shoved behind boxes in the basement, stripped of its throw and smelling faintly of dust. Janet and I wrestled it back into place. When I finally sat in it, The leather creaked in a way that made my eyes sting. In the hallway closet, wedged behind someone else's winter coat, I found our wedding photo. The frame was nicked, but the picture was the same. Frank in his too big suit. Me with flowers in my hair, both of us squinting into a future we couldn't see. I wiped it off with the edge of my sleeve and rehung it over the mantel, right where it had always belonged. Room by room, the house began to look like itself again. There were scars. A chipped tile, a dent in the wall where a toy had hit, nail holes from their pictures. But it was mine, and it was quiet. With the immediate crisis over, Harris and I sat down one last time to talk about the future. "I can't stop people from trying to take advantage of you," he said. "But we can make it a lot harder next time." He helped me put the house into a revocable living trust, with me as trustee while I'm alive. We added a neutral co-trustee, my cousin Ellen, who lives 2 states away and has no interest in my property except to do right by me if I can't decide for myself. We updated my will again, this time with very clear, very specific instructions about who gets what, and when. "Ambiguity is the thief's best friend," Harris said. "Clarity is yours." I made sure copies of everything were in his office, in a fireproof box at the bank, and one locked drawer that only Ellen and I know about. I wrote down, in my own shaky hand, that no major decisions are to be made about my home or care while I'm in a hospital bed or heavily medicated. If someone tries to wave a pen under my nose in a gown again, they'll have a harder time using it against me. Weeks went by without a word from Daniel. I told myself I didn't expect anything, that I was done waiting for him to be someone he wasn't, but a part of me still jumped whenever my phone buzzed. One afternoon, washing dishes at the sink, I heard the familiar chime. It was a text from an unsaved number I knew by heart. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me." I stood there with my hands in the soapy water, the phone propped against the faucet. A dozen responses flashed through my mind: anger, sarcasm, a paragraph about pain and betrayal. Instead, I set the phone aside, finished the dishes, wiped down the counter. I let myself feel all of it, the grief of losing the son I thought I had, the faint ember of love that refused to go out completely. It took me 3 days to answer. "Get help," I finally typed. "Be a better man. Maybe one day we can talk, but not now." He didn't reply. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he thought silence would hurt me. It did, but not the way it used to. This time, the distance had a boundary I'd drawn myself. I spent a lot of time thinking about how we got there. Where I had helped Daniel and where I had enabled him. I'd bailed him out of so many small disasters, always hoping the next time would be different. I told myself that's what mothers do. But there's a thin line between support and sacrifice, and I had let him cross it more than once. Love doesn't mean letting someone use you until there's nothing left. It doesn't mean handing over your dignity because you're afraid they'll leave. I learned that lesson late, but I learned it. One bright morning, I went to visit Frank at the cemetery. I'd avoided it since all this started. I felt like I'd failed him. But as I stood there with my hand on the cool stone, I realized I needed to tell him the end of the story. "I kept it," I said softly. "Our house. They tried to take it, and for a while they did. But I took it back. I didn't let them erase what we built." A breeze kicked up, rustling the leaves. I could almost hear him snort and say, "Took you long enough to stop babying that boy." And for the first time in a long time, I smiled at his grave. I wasn't alone through any of it. My church ladies showed up with casseroles and paint rollers. The men from the congregation fixed the loose step on the porch and patched the dented wall. Mrs. Lewis from next door brought her lawn chair over, and we sat on the front lawn together, watching the world go by like we used to. Janet became more than a friend, she became a sister. We spent evenings on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sun sink behind the maple tree Frank and I had planted. Sometimes we talked about what had happened, sometimes we didn't. It was enough just to have someone there who knew the whole story and still looked at me with respect, not pity. If you're an older person listening to this, I want you to hear me clearly. Don't be ashamed to protect yourself. Get things in writing, yes, but also read what you're signing. Ask questions until you understand. And if you're in a hospital bed, groggy and scared, it's okay to say, "Not now." Any document that can't wait until you're clear-headed isn't for your benefit. And if you're younger, Remember, your parents' home is not your backup plan. It's not your safety net to grab whenever life gets hard. It's the roof that sheltered you, the walls that heard your first words and your worst tantrums. Treat it, and the people who paid for it, with respect. Help them because you love them, not because you're waiting for them to get out of your way. Greed can turn even a child into a stranger, but boundaries and the truth can protect you. Blood alone doesn't make someone family. Loyalty and respect do. Elders are not in the way. They are the reason younger generations even have a chance. Now I want to ask you something. Do you think I should have pressed criminal charges against my own son and daughter-in-law, or was regaining my house and cutting ties enough justice? If your own child tried to take your home the way mine did, would you ever forgive them? And on a more personal note, have you ever felt someone treated you differently because they were thinking about your inheritance or your property? Do you, or your parents, have clear plans for your home and assets so no one can twist things when you're most vulnerable? If this story made you think about your own family or your future, share your thoughts below. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and if you've seen anything like this happen in your own life. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people can learn the warning signs, protect themselves, and remember, you're never too old to stand up for what's yours.